Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank y'all for coming out, and I want to go ahead and get started. A lot of faces I know, some faces I don't. So just to give you a brief introduction about myself, my name is Umar Johnson, and I'm a nationally certified school psychologist. And what I do as a psychologist is I evaluate school-aged children between 3 and 21, and I determine whether or not they have educational disabilities and whether or not they need special education placement. Any child who goes into special ed only goes there because they were properly, or should have been properly, evaluated by a school psychologist who diagnoses them with one of 13 educational disabilities as recognized by the Pennsylvania Department of Education and the Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act of the federal government. And once it has been determined by a school psychologist that you have one of these 13 educational disabilities, we then ask the question of whether or not the child will need a special form of instruction in order to make progress. If the child doesn't need a special form of instruction in order to make progress, you don't get special ed. In other words, you don't get special ed just because you got a disability. You can have a disability and not need it. You only get it because you have a disability plus you need it. Very important. For example, you can have a child who's dyslexic, okay, but if they're a true dyslexic child, and we tend to think all of our kids are dyslexic when they're not, but if they're a truly dyslexic child, there's really not much you can do about that if they're reading backwards, which is only one form of dyslexia. Dyslexia just means a serious reading problem. But if they have the dyslexia that causes them to read backwards, there's not much you can do about it because it's a neurological problem. And so what you would do is keep them in a regular class, and the teacher would score their work backwards. In other words, if it's a problem that you can't fix, you accommodate to it. Okay? You only need special education if you can't accommodate to it in a regular classroom. Okay? My last lecture series I did here from April to July was on psychoeducational issues, and I didn't bring any copies of those tapes because I have them on audio tape. But I'll make sure I have them at my next presentation in November, so you can have that if it's something that you want. But we did one lecture right here in April on the history of blacks in education. I have that on tape. The second one was Supreme Court decisions of black education, which basically shows you how the federal government through the United States Supreme Court has been one of the major enemies to black education in this country. But along with that, I'll point out some ways that you can use the law to benefit yourself and your children. That was a powerful one. The third one was on psychotropic drugging and the Ritalin and the Adderall and the Strattera and that whole phenomenon, which hasn't slowed down yet. And we'll talk about that a little bit today. And then the fourth one was on special ed, segregation by another name. Okay, and basically what I said was specific learning disability, which is the most popular of those 13 I just talked about. Specific learning disability was created in Chicago, Illinois 1 year before the Civil Rights Act of '64. Why? Because Brown versus Board had already outlawed discrimination on race grounds in '54. So when the Civil Rights Act came in '64, they needed some sort of strategy whereby they could continue to separate black kids from white kids, so they came up with specific learning disability. And most black children in special ed are in there because of this subjective diagnosis that says even though they have normal intelligence, they can't learn a skill. They can't be proven. There's no test that can screen for a specific learning disability, just like there's really no test that can screen for ADHD. Okay, them two. Specific learning disability, SLD and ADHD, okay, is like a plague on our community. And it's primarily a plague because it's our fault that we let our kids get these diagnoses in the first place. And they wouldn't even have them if we learned how to raise them properly. A lot of this just comes out of poor parenting styles. As I always say, we don't have a child problem, we have a parent problem, because every kid out there killing, selling crack, or dropping out came out of somebody's house. Okay? So you gotta look at the tree, not the fruit. Fruit don't grow themselves. You gotta look at the tree. Anyhow, tonight is part 1 of 3 of Black Family in Crisis. Tonight we're going to deal with the tragedy of child molestation, rape, incest, and domestic violence. And then on Thursday, November the 8th, we're going to deal with teenage pregnancy and the sexual behavior of our teens. And then in December, second week in December, I have the flyers over there. Make sure you get one at the end of the night's presentation. We're going to deal with black male-female relationships and black marriage. Okay, which is going to be pretty interesting. But tonight we're dealing with this. And the reason I chose to come out the gate with this one is because as a school psychologist, it is a growing phenomenon in our community. We hear a lot about black on black violence in the street, but we don't hear anything about the violence going on in our homes. And the violence going on in our homes is as bad as, if not worse than, the violence going on in the street. And the reason why we don't hear much about it is because it's a very sensitive topic. Number one, that's my business. Number two, that's her life. Number three, I don't want the law in my world. Okay? Number four, it can make preachers and ministers look bad. Okay? Especially when people who give a lot of money to the congregational efforts are the ones doing the abusing. Politicians like to cover up constituents who do a lot for them if they are abusers. I say that to say that men or women, okay, who become abusers tend to have a power complex. So they tend to be people who either have no power or already too much. And I know firsthand, because I get phone calls, that within our churches, and it's sick, that we have certain people, I'm not talking about the Catholic Church, I'm talking about black churches, where big name people are molesting the children, and no one's saying nothing about it, including the child's parents, because of this religious control that they have over y'all, or us. Okay? So, we got to talk about that tonight because the children are suffering. Now, people say, well, why would you put domestic violence with child molestation, rape, and incest? That answer is real simple. Okay? Children who live in homes where mother is battered are 10 times as likely to get abused. So they go hand in hand. Rarely will you see children getting abused where their mom is getting abused too. Okay? Abuse can be sexual, it can be physical, and it can be verbal. Don't overlook the verbal abuse. In fact, that's the worst form. Okay? Because the physical scars can heal. Okay? You can potentially suppress, although not effectively, the sexual abuse, but when you are verbally abused, what happens is the abuse gets internalized. Like post-traumatic slavery disorder. It gets internalized, and you become the perpetrator against your own self. So the verbal abuse is very key. Okay? And we have this thing called vicarious abuse. What's vicarious abuse? That's where mom is getting beat, or dad is getting beat, and the children see it. Just by seeing it, they can get traumatized. Because you get people who say, well, I didn't touch them. It was just me and the mom with the problems. Yes, but they saw it. They saw it, and the brain cannot distinguish between what it says, what it sees, and what it does. It's all the same. The brain can't tell whether it's your imagination kicking in or your real-life perception. Very important. Well, I forgot we got a new thing here today. We moved up. This is correct. I can actually control it myself.
Technology.
Okay, the other way. Got it. All right. I'm not that technological, you know. Sophisticated. Okay, let's start off. It's your problem too. Studies find that 50% of all women will be impacted by domestic violence within their lifetime. Half! It's even higher for black women. Why? Because rape and violence are what? Issues of power, not sex. So when people commit this, although there's a sexual element, anyone who denies that is lying, particularly with rape and molestation, but it is predominantly about power. Why do we see more of this, sometimes manifested in powerless groups? Because men and women have a natural psychological need to control their environment. And so when you go to work and you deal with racism there, and if you're in the community and you deal with racism there, where do you get the opportunity to exercise power? You don't, so you go home. And you make up your mind that at least in this place, I'm going to be king. And anybody who goes against that will be properly, effectively, and brutally dealt with. Most doctors do not document domestic violence. This is bad. Why? Because a lot of women and abused men, even though most victims are women, clearly, and most perpetrators are men, but there is a growing epidemic of men being abused. Okay? And a lot of these men grew up in homes where they saw their mom get abused, and because they are totally wed against the idea of touching a woman as they should, it can become pathological in the sense that when they get abused by a woman, they just take it. Okay? Now, she's not body slamming them, but she might be burning them with irons, hot water, punching, kicking, scratching, and all of that old type of stuff. Okay? Stabbing. All right? But doctors don't document it, and that's bad again because why? If you don't want nobody in your business, which is one of the worst thoughts we have as a people, because everybody knows what we do with us, okay? When you go to the doctor, that's one of the few places where a woman or a man can potentially express themselves and talk about what's going on. But you have to invite that, okay? You have to invite that. But if the doctor sees it and don't even talk about it, it's not going to get dealt with. And most of them don't because they don't feel like reporting. They don't feel like going through the steps, okay? And they also know how defensive an abused victim can become when questioned about the abuse. You're going to see a couple of references here. Silent Witness National Initiative, they do a lot of good statistical work, so I'm quoting them throughout some of my information I got directly from them. Did you know we must keep an eye on our mothers and our grandmothers as older women are abused as much as the younger ones? In fact, the only group, first of all, young black women from about, and I got the statistic coming up, somewhere like between 18 to 24, 20 to 24, they have the highest rate. Young black girls, so that's your college age, fresh out of high school age. After them are black women in their mid-50s. Okay? They get abused just as much. And women past 60, we're talking 70 and 80-year-old grandmothers are also being abused. Why? Because that man, okay, grappling with the fact that he's starting to lose his functionality in life, is stressed, and he's taking it out on her. And of course, old couples tend to be isolated, unfortunately. You know, we like to discontinue our relationship with them when they get a certain age, which is not an Africanism, that's a Europeanism, but we picked it up, so they become increasingly isolated from the rest of the family. So they're less likely to tell, and you're less likely to see it. The stresses of old age and the accompanying helplessness felt by many older men make them candidates for perpetrators of domestic violence. Just as how shameful it is for an abused victim to step forward, it's just as shameful for an abuser to do the same thing. Okay? It's a lot of shame about to say, you know, I got a problem beating women, or I got a problem beating men, or I got a problem raping, molesting, or beating on children. That's not something people are going to come forward and admit in a lot of times, because there's a big shame element there. It's one thing to say I'm depressed, or I have bipolar, or I'm schizophrenic. That's one thing. But if you say, hey, you know, I'm a rapist, or I'm a molester, or you know, I have a problem beating on women, you're not going to come forward and say that, regardless of race, which is why it goes so untreated. Women don't speak up. Only about 15% of victims of domestic violence report the crime. Look at that. Half of all women will become a victim in their life. And when I speak of women, I'm speaking from 15 all the way up until death. Because it starts that young. And you got to blame the parents for that. Because if you have a teenage or pre-teenage girl living in your house, how could you not know that she's being abused by her boyfriend? Now, 40 years ago, the excuse was, I'm married. He bought this house. Look at the car I'm driving. He takes care of his children. 50 years ago, today, he ain't bought you no house, no car. Y'all don't even live together. In fact, you still live with your parents and he living where he is, but somehow, through the mechanism of psychological control, he can whip you and ain't doing nothing for you. And we see that with the teens as well as the older women. Okay? In 2006, only 8% of domestic violence victims reported their victimizers to the authorities. Look at that, 8%. 8% of those who were abused. And those of us who see the abuse, we don't report it either. Very bad situation. Beware the stereotype. Studies find that highly educated and employed women with medical coverage are just as victimized by domestic violence as poor women. Please understand this. As I said earlier about the power dynamic in low-income neighborhoods,
And people of color, because of the oppression that we face from the general society at large, you're going to see higher incidences of domestic violence. But don't fool yourself. Educated women who appear to have the self-esteem and strength of will to walk away from something like that cannot. Okay? It's a reality, so we have to watch everybody. Poor, rich, black, white, old, young. Causes depression. Women who are victimized are 3 times as likely to go on and develop clinical depression, which is what? The #1 correlate of suicide. Most depressed people don't commit suicide, but most suicide victims were depressed. Okay, so it's a straight line. And unfortunately, because of us as parents, I gotta go back to that, okay, we model inappropriate behavior in our homes. And what I mean by that, if a girl grows up seeing mom get beat on all through life, that becomes a what? Normalized behavior. So when she dates, it's totally acceptable for her to accept that normalized behavior. When a pathological condition is allowed to go on and on unchecked, it gets normalized. Just like our children now have been desensitized to violence, many of them, because a pathological condition has become normalized for most of us. You click on the news, 10 bodies this past weekend. You don't even flinch. Okay? But if certain other groups clicked on the news and they heard that, it would be a crisis immediately. Town hall, the city would stop. But us, we have become desensitized. In fact, we believe like others believe that, well, that's just how we are. Multiple forms of abuse. Half of abused women suffer from more than one type of abuse. You can always almost count in the verbal abuse because it starts that way. It starts with the verbal abuse. And this is the cycle, the generation recidivism cycle, because she watched mom get abused. Okay? So then, because mom was abused, mom was not emotionally available for her daughter. So the first chance she gets, she runs out looking for love. And guess who she runs into? Somebody who can't provide it just like mom did. And the cycle just keep on going on and going on. So you got great-grandma was abused, all the way down to great-granddaughter. Because nobody steps up to stop the system, and nobody's talking about this problem. Teenage girls are just as likely and sometimes more even to get victimized by their boyfriends, with parents hardly doing anything about it, even when they know. And I know this, because working in the schools, I've had to call parents before and say, hey, your daughter get beat on by her boyfriend. Did you see her arm? Yeah, well, you know, that's her fault. Because if she didn't let him do it, he wouldn't do it. But this is a child, a growing baby. Why do we let our children make adult decisions? And what we fail to realize is when you let your child make an adult decision, they blame you if it comes out wrong. Every time. So as I said before, we have a situation now, an epidemic, where teenage black kids are hating their parents because you let me mess up when you shouldn't have. It is not their decision whether or not they go to college or trade school. It is not their decision, in my opinion, when they go to high school, whether they get a job, whether or not the boyfriend can spend a night. That's not up to them. But you leave it up to them. And so then when they end up with 3 babies before they're 20, they're going to blame you because why wasn't you on your job as mom? Or why wasn't you on your job as dad? I can tell you, as someone who went to a semi-private school, Scotland School for Veterans Children. I went to a military school, residential. A lot of us, when we went there, we didn't want to be there. Some of us said, well, our parents sent us here, et cetera, et cetera. But when we got out, we understood the wisdom behind the decision. And I got friends, on the other hand, who went to Scotland, wanted to come home. Parents took them out. They hate their parents now because their life went to hell. And that's not to say that everybody who came out of Scotland made it because they didn't. But most of them did. I'm saying that to say you got to make them decisions. You're the one with the experience. You have to do that. Very important that you understand that because they will blame you. Yes, you can give them a decision. Within what? A clearly defined set of options. Okay? You want to play football. Okay. You can play it for Central. Okay? I'll let you play it for Masterman. I'll let you play it for Roman. Okay, but you ain't gonna play it for some schools I ain't gonna name because they're in my neighborhood. Okay? That ain't an option. well, so-and-so go there. That ain't an option for you. Because you the child, I'm the parent. But see, we start out from this high. Letting them make their own decisions. Okay? You got to get in touch with your parenting styles. There's 3 types of parents. Passive, aggressive, and balanced. The passive parent, this is the mother who feels so guilty that his father wasn't in his life. The passive parent is the parent who don't give no discipline, all they give is love. So what? He got all S. I'm going to get him what he wants for Christmas because that's my baby. So what? He gets kicked out of school every day. His father wasn't in his life. That's my baby. So what? He got locked up for damn near killing somebody. That's my baby. So you got all the emotional support, but there's no discipline. These are the kids who grow up to commit crime. They're in and out of jail. They drop out of school. Why? Because responsibility was not something they were used to. On the opposite side, you have the aggressive parent. Okay? This is the one who ain't got no emotional support. It's all rules. I want straight A's and B's. You better get a 1600 on the SAT. You better get into Harvard or this or that. Why you drop the pass in the football game? You didn't make honor roll this semester. What's wrong with you? You know what them kids grow up to be? Depressed, anxious, suicidal. I know. Because a lot of my adult patients who I see are in those high echelon professions. Doctors, lawyers, engineers. And you know what the problem is? From the time they was this high, they was told that they better succeed. And they have it all now, but still looking for the next level. Because all they can keep hearing is mom and dad in their mind telling them you still ain't good enough. So you got passive at this end of the spectrum, all emotion, no discipline, and you got aggressive over here, all discipline, no emotion. You need balance. You got to be in the middle. What is a balanced parent? A balanced parent is the one who knows when to give the emotional support and when to give the discipline. You know when to let them make the decision and when you had enough. And there's no prescription for it. It's an art to being a good parent. It's an art to it. And you have to develop it based on your own personality and your child's. It's all about a match. It's all about a match. But you best not be on any end of the spectrum because you're going to have problems. Children in homes where domestic violence takes place are more likely to be abused. Victims of domestic violence were often child abuse victims and were more likely to witness domestic violence as children themselves. Why does this happen? Because again, pathology gets normalized. You grow desensitized to it, and more often than not, you start saying, well, if mom went through it and her and dad still together, maybe it ain't that bad. Okay? But the truth of the situation, young people, is most women who get killed, most women who are murdered by their husbands, lovers, and boyfriends. That's the reality. Okay? And then we got this thing that taught from mom and grandma that if he hits you, that's just love because he don't know no other way to show it. Well, that's the problem. Because the more he loves you, the more you're going to get beat. And when he gets to the point where he's totally infatuated, you dead. And it may sound funny, but it's the reality. It's the reality. 73% of abuse victims are women, and 75% of the perpetrators are men. It's just the reality, fellas. But we get abused too. Men do get abused. The incidence is going up. Men who, don't know when to walk away. They saw mom get abused, so they don't want to stand up for themselves. Okay, instead of just leaving the situation, they either stay there and get walked on through the entire relationship, or they end up snapping and killing. The incidence of men being abused by women is growing. Domestic violence is also high amongst gay, lesbian, and transgender. Okay? The average age of domestic violence victim is 25 to 54. Your prime. Your prime. Okay? And a lot of this got to do with how we actually choose our mates. We'll deal with it in the third section. 1 in 5 people murdered in 2002 were murdered by a relative. This ain't just lovers and husbands. This is brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews and cousins. Again, that internalized hatred is so strong that it leads us to hurt one another now. Totally ridiculous. Children who are treated scornfully by their parents are thus more emotionally scarred and more likely to attract abusing partners and be less likely to leave because of it. Spending your whole life in this pathology. People always ask the question, how can somebody like Halle Berry and other beautiful black women have such low self-esteem? Tell you, it's simple. The brain is a creature of repetition. Whenever you constantly feed the mind, it will come to believe whether it's fact or not. Look at us. We were the first people on the planet here all by ourselves for 2 billion years. Nobody else was here. Gave them every science. But most of us, when we look in the window, in the mirror in the morning, we see hatred and we see somebody who's nothing. How could God's first people come to devalue themselves so much? Because for 246 years, all you kept hearing was, you nothing. And even though you don't hear it no more, you can still hear the sound resounding in your subconscious. It's the same thing with women. No matter how gorgeous they get that one man, or men, same thing. They get that one man, you're nothing, you're nothing, you're nothing. Sooner or later, they go to the mirror and they see nothing. That's why you got to get out of that situation, ladies, as soon as it starts to come. And the problem is, y'all think y'all can change people. Men too. You cannot change them. In fact, psychologists say that the human personality is relatively fixed between 3 and 5. So how do you think you're going to meet somebody in their 30s, 40s, and 50s and think you're going to change them or mold them? You can't do it. You got to make an evaluation with the facts at hand. Can I deal with this or can I not? And the incidence of people being married and miserable is going through the roof. Tyler Perry's new movie, #1. Everybody watch it and see what I did for them. Like mother, like daughter. Daughters who witness their mothers get abused are more likely to get abused. Boys who witness domestic violence are more likely to commit the crime and are more likely to be victims. Why is this relevant? I often tell people that one thing that we never ask for when we date, and some people find it funny, but I'm telling you it would save you a whole bunch of trouble. Something we never ask for, fellas or ladies. #1, can I see your child abuse clearance? #2, can I see your criminal clearance? And #3, can I have a copy of any psychological evaluation you ever had? You know how much trouble you would save yourself just by seeing them 3 documents? But by a show of hands, who has ever asked for them 3? None of us do. None of us do. But we got to get to the point where we start doing it because you find that stuff out 10 years down the road. He was in jail for killing somebody. He not even told you. Or she was in jail for slicing somebody. Okay? Because he shoots, she stabbed. Okay? Nah, nah, nah. So you got to start asking for that child abuse and that criminal. I'm telling you. They got to have it for the job anyway. Okay? If they got a job. And I don't really say that in a derisive manner. And the reason I don't say that in a derisive manner is because I keep hearing all this talk about black on black violence. And how we don't know what to do with them Negroes, why they keep killing and fighting each other. But guess what? There's a triangle. Did that just click? Okay. That's me, I'm losing. There's a triangle. Miseducation in this corner. Lack of economic opportunity in this corner. And at the top of the triangle is self-hatred, internalized slavery. Okay? Now, nobody outside our community can help us with the internalized slavery. Okay? White psychology can't help like you. Okay? We deal with the spirit, they deal with the behavior. Okay? Now, miseducation. Okay? 3 things your child will never get in the school district of Philadelphia or anywhere else. #1 is a true and complete knowledge of self. I just heard a few weeks ago that they're about to take the Black History curriculum out that they just put in a few months ago, but only giving it 1 credit for 9th grade. They're going to take that 1 credit out. And they're going to take it out because the homosexual group said, well, wow, if they can get it, why can't we get it? Since when does man, I respect everybody, whatever they do. But how do you equate racial group membership, which is unchangeable and natural, to somebody's choice? But see, that's our fault. Because when the civil rights movement took off, and we still do this today, every time we go to fight for somebody, we get on the phone and we call up, all due respect, the Asians. We call up the Hispanics. We call up the Europeans. We call up everybody we can find and say, will y'all help us? And then when we get our rights, they'll take them rights and leave you right where you was at. And that's why affirmative action benefited women, okay, homosexuals and handicaps, physically challenged, more than us. And we the ones who died for it. But that's our fault because you got to learn how to struggle for yourself. Everyone has their own issues. When Chinatown wants to get something passed, they don't go calling you. Okay? They have too much self-respect for that. When Jews decide that it's time to get something done, they don't call you. And I respect them for that. Because there's a certain level of dignity and honor that we don't got. We go begging and pleading people to help us do something that we don't need help in. We are half the population in the city, but you would think we was less than 10% the way we act. Totally ridiculous. But anyway, half the black men in New York City, half the black men in Philadelphia are unemployed. Okay? We know that even with all the violence, most of the men locked up are not locked up for violence, they're locked up for non-violent drug-related offenses. That means money. The problem is once you get one felony, nobody's going to hire you anymore. And that little weak reentry program that the city and the state got don't mean nothing. Because I work with people in it. A few jobs here, packing up here, packing some meat. That ain't no job. You got 2 babies to feed and they want to give you McDonald's. Okay? I'm not for drug dealing because I know the drugs was brought to us. We didn't go get them. I don't know no brother talking about I got a plane to catch to Columbia tomorrow. Okay? The stuff is brought to you. Okay? So I'm not excusing it, but what I'm saying is we got to look at the reality. If we want them to put that down, we better have a broom or something they can pick up. Okay. Otherwise, you can't go to them like that because they got mouths to feed. That's the reality of the situation. And it bothers me because with all these initiatives going around in the city that everybody's so excited about, not one person has said that we got to step to the city and demand our jobs. Our tax dollars are funding these construction programs that are being dictated by European unions. That don't make any sense. And most of our leaders are afraid of unions, and I know why, because unions will die for the right to control you. The problem is you won't die for the right to control yourself. And that's the situation. Children who are treated scornfully by their parents are thus more emotionally scarred and more likely to attract abusing partners and be less likely to leave because of it. Daughters who witness their mothers get abused are more likely to get abused themselves. Even though we're focusing on African American, this applies to everybody. Okay? And I can tell you, I see abused women from all groups. You'd be surprised. Okay? It happens to everyone, but you know, we're focusing on us. But this is relevant to all women. Like father, like son, boys who witness are more likely to commit. A survey study with doctors found that 90% do not document or report it. Shame on them. Guns and love. Guns were the most common weapon used by males to murder females. 54% of the time when a woman is killed by her lover, she's killed with a gun. Okay? So if you're crazy, first thing you need to know is I got 7 sisters and they call me, first thing I'm gonna ask, do you got a gun? I'm still coming. But I got like a catch. I didn't know how heavy y'all can argue with me. Race can complicate things. Black women, and this is a real big problem. This is why the religious community really got to get involved. Black women, conscious of the obstacles faced by black men, are more likely to bear the burden and not report it, out of guilt and unwillingness to serve them up to the authorities. And I understand that. As much as he hurt me, I can't serve him up. But sometimes, sisters, when you're talking to a Garvey to the core, you got to do what you got to do. Until the community get to the point where we can police our own, right now we got a bunch of wimps in leadership positions. We ain't got no man that will step to another man and say, look, don't touch it no more. Game over. We don't have that no more. Okay? Until we get there, if your life is threatened, you got to let somebody know. Even if you don't go to the police, you go to somebody who can intervene. I'm telling you, because too many of us are being killed by this, and this ain't making the newspapers because it's not what we want to deal with. We don't mind a murder here, murder here. You start seeing another woman killed by her lover. Okay, that starts to hit home with you, but you got to stop bearing that burden. It ain't yours to bear. This ain't slavery. It ain't like he out there, fighting for freedom. He beating on you. What they got? Where's the honor in it? Okay. Verbal abuse is just as bad. 89% of women report being verbally abused at some point in their life. 89% of women. That means only 11% of women. This ain't just black as well. Only 11% can say I was never abused in any form in my life. Poor women are at higher risk for being victims of rape and domestic violence, as powerlessness in men is greater at this level. I'm going to tell you something else. Moms, aunts, grandmoms, great-grandmoms, and cousins. And you know why I say that? Because as soon as I start talking about kids, you know the first thing I hear? I ain't got none. Mine grown. Okay? But we all have other children in our life who we so selfish. We don't even realize all the kids we're responsible for. Okay? But the reason why I say this is because I think it's very dangerous for a teenage girl, or even a young adult woman, to go on a date by herself with a man who nobody else in your family met or knows about. That is very dangerous. Because rape is very hard to prove in this state. Very hard to prove in Pennsylvania. Okay, and you going on a date, you're going back to his house, just because he got on sneakers and a chain, okay? All right? That don't mean he ain't got a problem, okay, with violence or rape. Just like it means he could have HIV too. And the reason why so many of our sisters are coming up HIV positive is because they're dealing with brothers who are bisexual, but because that's something we don't tolerate in our community, they stay where? Down very low. Not just down low, but very low. Okay? So I'm telling you, your daughter dating, your niece dating, you need to come in here and speak to me. And the problem is, I done see these young guys roll up to your house, mom and dad, and this is real pathetic if it's a man in there. Honk the horn, she come running out, tripping, gold wig falling off. Okay? Glasses all the way down to her cheek, them new glasses they wear, everybody like a beetle, right? And I'm looking, and I'm like, you mean to tell me one of the parents ain't gonna come out there and say, you better come in here and speak? We let him do, he don't even open the car, he's so low. Right? Car $200, rims $3,000, he low as hell. And she running over there letting herself in. Hip hop. Yeah, right. Okay? But the problem is, mom, aunt, cousin, big sister, you can't say nothing, because guess what? When your boo come, you do the same thing. 60 years old, heels up here, skirt all high. We got to grow up. Okay? We do. I'm 33 now. I don't buy no jeans no more because I got to grow up. Okay? I don't want to be 60 with a sweatsuit, Sean John, Air One. No, I mean limping, but I got a sweatsuit on. The chicken or the egg. Women with low self-esteem are likely to become victims of domestic violence, but also domestic violence breeds the low self-esteem. So you say, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Is actually both. Because if you got low self-esteem, you're going to attract abusers who are going to make your self-esteem even lower. If it's one thing that I would advocate that parents do with their children, particularly their daughters, is inoculate them with a strong sense of self-determination and independence. I don't mean the independence that say you don't make enough money for me and you ain't driving the right car. That's superficial. That means nothing. I'm talking about a true sense of when I know that what's going on ain't right for me, I can roll. Now, if you just dating, so be it. But I'm talking about when they get to the point where they, critically in love, okay, and can't see straight. That comes from us. Because a lot of mothers I've seen beat their daughters down psychologically. I've seen it. You ain't nothing. You ain't never going to be nothing. So what, you in college? I'm like, that's your daughter. But there's a disconnect between the parents and the children, and the internalized self-hatred is so strong that it can break up any bond we got. I know mothers and daughters don't even talk. Ain't talked for 20 years. Fathers and sons ain't talked for 20 years. And we talking about slavery over. Which is interesting because when you study slavery in big cities like Philadelphia, you see most of the slaves never had to wear no chains because they was already properly domesticated. That's what we are, domesticated people. Women with low self-esteem and psychological problems are more likely to tolerate the abuse and get nasty with you when you say something about it. But you know what? You got to understand that's their pain. And you know what we do to run them away? We get nasty back. You can't be defensive. If I'm in therapy and my clients start cursing me out and saying, I don't yell back. You got to recognize that's a sick individual you're dealing with. You don't argue with sickness. You treat it. So if they got to let that out on you, you take that. You got to be strong enough to take that so you can help move them the way they want to go. Oh, I tried to help her. She won't get nasty. Let them beat her then. Come on. Brothers and sisters who fight tend to go on and become victims of abuse. Sibling rivalry is normal to an extent, but there's limits to it. Sometimes we don't know when the limits stop. They fighting in the hallway going to blows. Okay, that ain't sibling rivalry. That's about to be a sibling homicide. Young, beautiful, and black. And just so you know, we're going to segue from domestic violence into child abuse and molestation because, as I said, it starts with mom and works down to the kids. Okay, because the incidence of boyfriends raping children and girlfriends molesting children too is going through the roof. Last year alone, I think I had about a dozen in the schools where I worked. Okay, had to be called in. Little girls, you let your boyfriend babysit your child. Okay, and you hardly know him yourself. Look, when you date, not the baby. Okay, that comes way down the road. Okay, and you got to keep them people away from your children. Respectably, you let them know, look, until I get to know you, I'm not assuming you nothing. That's not fair to people. But this right here is mine. And if somebody messed with their innocence, I got to deal with that. Okay? All that sitting on their lap and all that, I'm not for it. Black women aged 20 to 24 experience the highest levels of intimate partner violence in the United States. And sometimes you see the word intimate partner violence instead of domestic violence, because when they say domestic violence, the first thing the young girls say, well, I'm not married, they're not talking about me. So they say intimate partner, married or not. Traditionally, women were battered by husbands. Today, they're being abused by lovers, boyfriends, ex-boyfriends, and divorced spouses who do absolutely nothing. See, before you had an excuse, today it's just sickness. You got women being abused, and they supporting him financially. Okay? Trace it back to the house. Don't blame them kids. Trace it back to the house. Many women report being victimized by men who they have never lived with. What kind of stuff is that? And then the mothers, you serve them up. He out there ringing your doorbell. Okay, music blasting. You better go out there because I don't want no trouble. Your dad said he don't feel like hearing it. Go on out there. You chose him. We force them to stay with these people instead of intervening. Okay? It's a lack of... See, we love our children, but we don't care for our children. And see, there's a difference. Love is an emotion. Care requires a physical action. I would never tell a parent you don't love your child. But I've told many you do not care about him because we never see you when it's time for a report card. You don't take him to the college access center when it's time for college. When he gets in trouble, you don't talk. When he's feeling bad, you don't process. Y'all don't sit down and have dinner together. You don't help him get a job. You are crippling that young man and young lady for the rest of their life when we're telling you love them. No, I'm sorry. You do love them. You don't care, though. You have to care. Verbal abuse at the job has steadily increased over the years and is one of the leading forms of abuse. This gets overlooked by men and women. You might be married and you can still get abused at the job verbally. You got some man, he like you, some woman, she like you. They just making your job a living hell, setting you up to get rolled up and fired. You got to speak on that. It's not fair. Okay? Life's stressful enough. Women in abusive relationships are more likely than non-abused women to get killed by their partner. It's very serious. And most of the time, it's in a range. Why is that important? Because the first thing a woman will say is, well, you know, he would never try to do that. Maybe he wouldn't, but when he get caught up in his emotions, and he ain't got no self-control, he done already shot. And now he's regretting after the fact. But you're going to hospitalized by now. Okay? Due to lack of internalized community structures and distrust of governmental and racist bureaucracy, black women have chosen more than other women to keep silent. We don't talk. And you know what? In religious communities, it's even worse. And no, I ain't talking about the Muslims. The people's, oh, you're the Muslim, bro. Whatever. I'm one. Okay? But whether it's Christian, Hebrew, black, traditional African, when they in their religious structures, they really don't tell because they view it, they conceptualize their problem as a betrayal of God. If I tell that I'm getting a living mess whipped out of me nightly, but because me and him made a promise to God, I can't stop him from hitting me. I'm trying to understand that. I ain't get there yet. Okay? I mean, serious. In religious community, you ain't going to find no woman tied to a religious community telling. That would be okay if the men in the religious community who know that they're getting abused will do something. But the imam ain't doing nothing. I know because I've seen it. The minister ain't doing nothing. I know because I've seen it. Okay? This is the reality, y'all. This is the reality. And we need to deal with this. Many clergymen and clergywomen are aware of abused members of the congregation but choose not to speak up so as not to embarrass the church or prominent financially supportive church members. And there is a small link between professional athletes and men and women in military service and domestic violence. Why? Because they have a highly stressed life. Remember, the equal power. If nothing else, I'm going to rule this home with an iron fist. Hierarchy of pay. Many abusers go on to become rapists, which is the worst form of abuse. Rape. 1.3 million women in this country and 835 men report being, 835,000 men report being victims of domestic violence. 20% in rising non-fatal partner violence accounted for 20% of violent crime suffered by women. That's almost a quarter. That was in 01. Imagine what the 07 stat will look like. Families are too silent. O.J. Simpson and the tragedy of family silence. I'm not getting into whether he did it or not. I don't know, and he's not a member of my race anyway. I've been through him out. But when you look at the Goldman family and how sad they were after their daughter died, and my heart goes out to anyone who's deceased. But what I want to know was, why did y'all never report him before? You know why? Because he was paying you to shut up. So as long as your bills got covered, your daughter didn't matter. Once she's 6 feet under, now you want to cry. That's the problem. And it just don't happen in Hollywood. It happened in North Philly, West Philly too. If he's nice to us, and I'm not even saying he's necessarily doing anything for you financially. He just might be a nice person. You might like to conversate. When you get along with them like that, you tend not to see what they're doing to your loved ones. That's why you got to always maintain 6 degrees of separation. We can get along, but there got to be 6 degrees of separation so I can see you for who you really are if you ain't right. Very important. It's her life, none of our business. They always go through that. I'm not getting in it. I now wish I would have. Like I said before, that none of your business stuff is killing. It's none of my business. They firebombing homes. So if they're next door to you selling crack or fighting or whatever, somebody firebomb their home, is it going to be none of your business then? Remember Move in 82, 83? That was nobody's business either. They torched the whole block. Now it's everybody's business. You got to get involved because sooner or later it's going to come to you. Like the African proverb says, none of us is free until all of us are free. Because what goes around comes around. And then you always get this. I'm so tired of hearing this. I wish I would have. 1,247 women were killed by an intimate partner in 2000. Access to firearms increases the possibility of domestic violence by 5 times. Okay, if there's a gun in the house, because you know gun, you only got the pull, click, click. Okay? It's the reality. When you date people, this is what you need to know. See, and we'll get this in the third session, but we want to know how much money you make, how many kids you got, how much child support you owe. Okay? I'm not saying that's not important. Those are questions you need to ask, okay? No romance, no finance, okay? But you got to ask these things. You haven't been to jail. What for? Okay? Very, very important. You haven't had a job in 10 years. Can you please explain why? Okay? Because what you better realize, if hypothetically, if I make 80 grand, and you don't, and you don't got no job, that's 40 I got. Okay? You gotta see, I gotta see, there's 20 grand I got. And now we want a baby together, we're gonna be in the shelter. Okay? So we gotta be realistic. And I tell you along the relationship lines, you know what's killing our relationships? Lack of communication and poor money management. Okay? Poor money management. We go out, we spend all our money, they nothing saved up. You taking the bill money, doing this. We got to get it together. And you know why so many of us go shopping? Shopping, like eating, inhibits anxiety. Because you go on a little mania spree. So when you see women going out spending their whole check, or men, on a whole bunch of junk, you got to ask yourself, is there something deeper going on in their life? See, what it is, it's a compensation for a lack of happiness. It's the same reason why people eat. That's why a lot of depressed people go on to be overweight, because eating and drinking inhibits depression for the moment. So does shopping. Okay? In fact, they're thinking about making that a disorder in the DSM and the DSM-3. Okay? So the disorder linked to people running out of shopping. Okay? It's a psychological pathology. Put it back. Okay? If you come out there with another bag, you're taking a bus home. And you know you won't get home with all them bags. Okay? been a trip over that block with boyfriends over strangers. The amount of women shot and killed by intimate partners was 3 times higher than women killed by men they did not know. This is so important. Don't get me wrong. You do have to protect yourself and your children against strangers. But the strangers are not the ones raping and killing. It's the people you know. It's the people you know. And we got like with child molestation, it's only like 3% were strangers. And there's a difference between a rapist and a molester. We'll get to that. Love can be a deadly game. 50% of offenders in state prisons for spousal abuse had killed their victims. 81% of the victims were women. Look at this. This don't come on the news, guys. Okay? Don't play the stalking game. More than 1 million women and 370,000 men are stalked every year in America. 77% of female victims know they're stalkers. 81% of women stalked go on to be abused by the perpetrator. So when they stalking you, you know it. So that whole thing, and you at the job, and you looking out the window, and he got on a Michael Myers mask, and they said, who that? You know him? No, child. Yes, she knew. She was out with him last night. You know who he is. He a stalker. And you got to get that restraining order. Don't get me wrong. You're going to see that they don't help too much, but they do help a little bit. The problem is, women who get abused are just as likely to break the restraining order as the men. You go running back to him, you done broke the order. As soon as you go back to him, boom, order broke. That's it, he can go back and do what he wants. And you ain't going to get another one because they're going to say you're playing with the law. Okay? Average case of stalking lasts 2 years. Did you know that? So soon as you start getting stalked, that's 2 years. You at the Sixers game, he over there. $12 seat with his phone when he over there. Okay? You at Unity Day, he on the stage doing security. Order of protection. 69% of women who get protection orders from their partners have the order violated. Some violated themselves. Look at that. 69%. That's only 30% who don't violate the order. If you ain't going to be serious, don't get it because they ain't going to give you a sentence. You better wait till you get serious. Stalking and femicide. Femicide means female homicide. 76% of female homicide victims have been stalked by the person who killed them. In other words, the signs are there. They don't just show up. They start with the stalk and then they get you. First of all, if a man or a woman is stalking, something ain't right in the noodle anyway. Okay, shake the noodle up or something, but something ain't right. 54% reported stalking to the police before they were killed. So you see what the cops do, nothing. Well, I mean, they did say what? That's 46% they did help. I don't want to beat up on the cops. Some are good, most not, but, you know. Black women in domestic violence. Black women suffer daily violence from family members. Family members and partners. Look at that now. Family members and partners at rates higher than any other ethnic group and 35% higher than white females. And then it's like, that's a percentage. 35% higher than white females, but then it's like 4 times greater than any other ethnic group. So sisters are hurt. You know what I mean? So brothers, we got to do our job and be respectful of it. You know, you can still crack the jokes, but just be respectful. Black women and rape. Nearly half of all black women report some sort of rape or molestation by the age of 18. In fact, I think most report their first encounter at 12. We'll see in a second. Number 1 killer of black women. Homicide at the hands of a current or former partner is the number 1 killer type of black women aged 15 to 34, tightly contested by AIDS. Look at that. 2 totally preventable diseases. Okay, because that's what I call the disease. And look at that. Number 1 killer. Okay. Teenagers and dating. 18 to 24-year-olds have the highest rate of domestic violence. That's your college boys. Okay? That don't mean you can't send them away to school. Because they can be in your home and get beat on. Okay, most of the ones I see, they still live right there and you don't know. 1 out of 5 high school girls are victimized by their lovers. 25%, look at this. What's going on? 25% of 8th and 9th graders report being victimized. Huh? Let somebody beat on your 8th grade daughter? 35% of 15 to 20-year-olds report rape, violence, or weapons threats. And they don't want to tell you why, because they care about the person who's doing it. Substance abuse. Girls who were abused by partners are more likely to smoke, drink, and use drugs. Whenever I do counseling with a teenage girl, if she says she smokes a lot of weed, smokes cigarettes regularly, or drinks regularly, or drinks at all, because she was drinking through 21, I automatically start assessing for potential suicide and past history of abuse, sexual, physical, or verbal. Okay, because smoking, for many of us, is an anxiety behavior. We do it to take our attention off of something else. Okay? And if you know anybody who's waking up in the morning and take a glass of alcohol and get started for the day, that's an abuser. And they need help. And that's another thing we're not dealing with. So when you look at these stats, remember, these stats ain't even dealing with the effect of alcohol or crack or weed on top of this. These are the same crazies. This ain't even the alcohol crack crazies. So I'm just saying, you got to understand that this problem is serious and ain't nobody dealing with it because everybody knows somebody who's doing it and they know if they deal with it, they're going to have to call them on. You see what I'm saying? So we can have 10,000 black men for violence as we should. But when will we have 10,000 black men for domestic violence? 1 out of 8 pregnant 12 to 18-year-old girls report being abused by the baby's father within the past 12 months. And this is normally during pregnancy. So you got teenage girls, in addition to the pregnancy being victimized. She already don't know what her life's going to be like after that child. Because you know the number one predictor of a life of poverty for a black girl is to have a baby before you graduate from high school. Okay? Relax. I was giving you the snap, princess. Stop biting your nails. That's nervousness, which means you're hiding something. I'm playing with you. No, that's a fact. Nail biting is a form of psychopathy. I know. Physical aggression in teens. 1 out of 3 teen relationships involve physical violence. All right? 1 out of 3 teen relationships. Rape. 8 out of 10 rape victims knew their perpetrator. 11% were raped by their fathers and stepfathers. I know a girl right now who's pregnant by a father. 14 years old. 10% raped by boyfriends or ex-boyfriends. Okay? And you gotta watch that ex-boyfriend thing. You know why? Because what happens is when they think they slipped out your grip, or you slipped out of their grip, they're more likely to rape as a form of power and control. Okay? Because I can't have you no more, he can have you, but he's gonna have damaged goods now. Okay? 16% raped by other relatives. Uncle Johnny here from North Carolina, go give him a hug. Okay? Yeah, I better see it. 29% raped by friends and family. That's the next door neighbors and stuff like that. I got some stories. You know, and it ain't, I'm not proud of it, but I got some stories. Less than a quarter raped by strangers. Look at that. Less than 75% of all rape is people you know. It's the family. And I'm gonna tell you something else you gotta assess for. Because there's so much divorce in our community and in America in general. You have to assess for how that other person will raise your child when you're not present if y'all split. That's so key. That's another thing we don't evaluate. Because if you got a child by a man and y'all split, you got to have some faith in who he gonna have around your child because you ain't got no control. Vice versa, man, you got to have some sort of faith in who she gonna have around your baby when you ain't there. And a lot of us know that the way we met them wasn't too cool. You know what I mean? So now we got to see that we ain't with them. We paranoid about what our children might be exposed to, and it's our fault. Okay? But that's another thing we need to assess for when we're dating that we don't. Victims have to deal with, this is why they don't tell. Rape is psychologically devastating. Victims have to deal with assumptions of the blame. Okay? And a lot of that is religious. You know that. That whole Adam and Eve, she tempted him, he bit the apple. So with women anyway, there's this thing, and I even hear about it in psychologists, they come out their mouth with it. She must have done something. If he jumped on her, you know what I mean, or something like that. It's this thing that we view women, all women, regardless of race, like they have some sort of devil in them. You know what I mean? And if he went that far to beat her, then she must have cheated, or if he went that far to rape her, then maybe she let him. It don't matter. Stop is stop, and no is nothing. That's number one. But on the flip side, ladies, you got to use your head too. If you know that ain't where you want to go, don't be there. Very, very important. Very, very important. And it ain't got nothing to do with how you dress, because it's about power. But y'all do got to put some clothes on. It's ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous. Okay? Totally ridiculous. I'm talking about great-grandma too. Totally ridiculous. Woo! When my book come out, I'm telling you, look at this. Emotional connectedness with the criminal. That's the biggest one from what I've seen. I love them, I can't tell them. Mistreatment from the legal system, that's big. How's a black woman going to go into a courtroom? Or anyone, for real? What did you do to do it? How did he touch you? Did he really touch you? Y'all heard about the situation in West Virginia a couple weeks ago, right? The sister was kidnapped by the family, and they made her eat rat feces, dog feces. They stabbed her, they beat her, they smashed her head into the toilet, called her, the N-word, etc. I read the transcript of the police interview. You can get it online. I don't know how it got there, but somebody got the whole transcript. You should have saw how insensitive the police were when they interviewed her. Now, this wasn't one woman with one man. This was a whole family of people she didn't even know who made her do all types of sick stuff. They was asking her things like, did you do anything that could have provoked it? What? I don't even know him. But you should have saw that was very, no type of empathy or nothing. So I know why women don't report. You got to go in front of the judge and he's looking at you, knowing he done violated you. And you got these people looking at you like you done done it. So a lot of times you don't even go because the legal system is not supportive. Development of psychopathology. This is big, especially in religious communities. Unwanted pregnancy. You want to know why that's big? True story. A couple years ago, I had to do a crisis eval with a sister who was raped by her kid's father. A couple years ago, up in Langston. She was raped by her kid's father. And the primary care physician came to me and said, I need to do crisis. She don't want this baby. And in order, they want to know whether or not she's psychologically making this decision to terminate in the right mind, given as though she has children with this man. And it was hard for me because as someone who, when I see a woman who ain't sure about what she wants to do, I think that they need to wait till they know what they want to do. Now, fundamentally, I'm a pro-lifer, but I'm not going to sit up here and say that I ain't seen some situations where I said, sometimes you got to think. And it bothered me because I felt that this young girl wasn't sure if she wanted to terminate or not, but that wasn't my decision. As a psychologist, I was purely there to assess whether or not she was in the right frame of mind. And I had to decide that she was, and that she wasn't able to report him at the time of the crime, but it bothered me because, I was saying to myself, like, if I was her brother, I would just say, you know what? If you terminate, 9 times out of 10, you're going to mess around and get pregnant in 2 weeks. You see what I'm saying? So we don't want to make this a birth control thing. You know what I mean? So I'm just telling you, sometimes as a psychologist, it can get difficult because you're feeling like you need to keep this because you ain't going to do nothing to get pregnant again, but at the same time, that ain't your call to make. You got to be careful of it. So I'm telling you, it can get really tough out there when you run into these situations. But then you got to, did he really rape her? Why didn't you tell? It can get tough. It can get tough. Rape is psychologically devastating. Okay, and it's recurrent memories, post-traumatic stress disorder. Okay, we all got post-traumatic slavery, but this is post-traumatic stress. Historical or religious misconceptions such as the myth that women are inherently evil and that they entice men only to repel them later. Adam and Eve original sin. We don't have no original sin in any of the spiritual systems in Africa. You got that from somebody else. It's hard to prove rape in court. Many women stop the legal pursuit because of mistreatment by the legal system. 25% of women first raped before the age of 12. What's that, 6th grade, 5th grade? 6th grade? You're supposed to be in 7th, though, I'm gonna get you. 35% of women first raped before 17. So 25% before 12 and 35% before 17. Look at this, they're not even adults yet. 65% of women are raped by their partners, not strangers. Okay? Only 50% of rape cases are reported to the authorities. The FBI says only 37% of rape is reported, and the U.S. Justice Department says only 27% of rape is reported. Look at that. A quarter. My daughter's going to college. 1 in 4 college women will be raped. I had a friend in college. Never forget, she called me one morning. I was president of the Black Student Union. I was just getting into psychology. I didn't know it. I didn't have the expertise I have now. And she called me and just told me somebody I knew just, violated her. It blew my mind. I'll never forget. I had no problem stepping up to the plate saying, look, we got to turn him in, boom, boom, boom. But she called me one morning, I'll never forget it. And I felt good she came to me, that she had that trust, but it's a hard thing. And if I wasn't there, I don't know what she would have done. But it's serious, and you got to talk to your girls when they're going to college, because a lot of rape happens in college. You in that dorm room, and you know how you do. We done all been there. You going over his room, and his roommate coming to your room, And he over there, we got the hoods on, creeping through the grass. But I was never into that. I was BSU pride. I had to set an example. Every 90 seconds, look at this. Every 90 seconds, a girl or woman is raped in America. Look how long we've been here. Homosexuals not excluded. 25 to 33% of same-sex partners are raped. And unfortunately, a lot of that leading right to HIV. Who are these criminals? Low self-esteem. This is what the criminals, you gotta look out for when you date. Men and women, low self-esteem. I tell gorgeous women all the time, they think I be joking. I don't be joking. I'm just letting you know. He's not the most attractive or intelligent thing in the world. So if this goes too far, and you decide you want out, he might not let you go. Men, it's the same thing, okay? She got 1.5 teeth. Also, I'm serious though. You got to make sure the person you dating has as much to lose as you do. I'm serious. If you date somebody who don't have as much to lose as you do when you go through tough times, what do they have to lose that will make them stop before they make that move? Take me. And I never laid my hands on a woman in my life, okay? If I want to go and hurt a woman, before I go out the door, you know what I got to ask myself? Ain't you working on your doctorate? Once you lose your school psych cert, I want everybody in the hood to know. You ain't gonna get no more graduation speeches. Okay? I'm serious. But if you date somebody who ain't got nothing, ladies, and you know what kills me? I know a lot of professional black women who date thugs. I mean, he ain't got nothing. And you know what they tell you? I like a roughneck. You got it then. Don't come to me. That's what they say. I like them rough. I had good guys, but you know, and fellas the same way. I had nice women, but I like them, you know, nasty and cursing me out and, you know, jumping on my windshield when I'm going down the street. Like doing a safari at the zoo. Quick to fall in love. That's a psychopathological problem. You've been dating somebody for 1 week, sex or not, they should not be telling you they're in love with you. Okay? Something's wrong. That just means I'm not letting you go. Okay? Excessively jealous, controlling. What are you wearing? Where are you going? Why you didn't call? Why I saw you over there talking to him and her? No. No one's married yet. And even then, there's rules to this. You gotta check people. Okay? Controlling you, stalking you. Yeah, I'm outside your mom's house. You just ate a piece of chicken. Unrealistic demands. Isolation. Oh, you know this is the #1 strategy, right? Before they start verbally, physically, sexually abuse, get them away from the family. Never let them get you from your family. And you know what women say? I'm strong enough. I'm going to move to Los Angeles with him. And if he loses mine, I'm going to let y'all know I'm flying home tomorrow. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Because once he gets you, they're going to whip that self-esteem down so low, you will not be flying. I'm telling you, as a protective measure, ladies, you don't let no man separate. If a man tells you why you got to go see your mom all the time, why your dad coming, huh? This is family. This is what we about. You don't let nobody do that. Okay? That's sickness. Child sexual abuse on the rise. Now we start to get to the children. This psychologically devastates the child, with some never recovering, unfortunately. Increased risk of suicide and post-traumatic stress. You know what that is. Okay, they daydreaming, they sleeping, they taking a nap, and they keep having recurrent visions of that trauma. Okay, women too. It's like being raped 1,000,000 times over every time you have that thought. Okay? You know the best thing to do? Protect them from it. Protect them from it. Okay? Please inspect the daycare centers, because even though they have a law, they don't follow it. And I can tell you that half these daycare centers got people working for them whose child abuse and criminal record ain't clean. Okay? Oh, well, he just come in and dropped the lunch off. Okay, he dropped off the lunch and picked up 2 damn kids, too. I'm serious. I'm serious. And you know what else y'all do? Y'all assume that the owner of the daycare got their papers. I don't care. You own a business. I understand. But where's your criminal and your child abuse? That's why I'm never getting crazy, because every time somebody calls me up and says we need to evaluate some kids, birthday they want, criminal and child abuse. Ain't no woman going to, let me destroy what I work for. And that's how you got to take it. I'm not losing these two papers. Okay? Do what you want. Okay? Want to beat up my truck? Beat it up. I need to do it anyway. All right. Protect our babies. Black girls are the youngest to get molested and raped. Okay? When they looked at all rape across race, the youngest were the black girls. You know where it comes from? Babies having babies. Okay? Drug-addicted moms and fathers who leave their kids on anybody long enough to go get ahead. Okay? Black boys are not too far behind. The incidence of boys being molested is sick, and fellatio, okay, which is oral, is going through the roof. Okay? And you got to watch that because it's quicker, harder to prove, and easy to get away with. That ain't funny either. Okay? Black church is solid. The incidence of non-Catholic church molestation is increasing in the black congregations. Okay? And it ain't going to be but a minute of time for one of them newspapers get wind, and they're going to blast the black churches. You understand? And that will be a shame on us. That will be a shame on us. What can happen when these children grow up who are raped or molested or abused? Mood disorders, anxiety disorders, biting their fingernails, stuff like that. That ain't why you bite yours. Yes, none of this stuff. Substance abuse, homosexuality. Don't wait, get help immediately. Let me talk about the homosexuality for a minute. And again, I believe all human beings should be respected. I don't, personally approve of the lifestyle. My best friend was homosexual. I didn't find out till he was a young adult. He just died of AIDS last year. And the family didn't even tell me so I could go to the funeral. Okay? So, I had to deal with it personally. I never knew that he was. He had a crush on my sister. We was always tight. We grew up, and then I found out, and he had HIV. You know what I mean? It hurt. He was like a big brother to me because I'm the oldest boy in my family. So he was like my brother. It was just tough. It was tough. And I just found out he died last year. Like a few months ago. I'm riding up the street, I see his brother. I said, where he at? He died. Everybody bothered to call. You know what I mean? So, well, let me tell you where this comes from. And I never asked him about this, because that was his life. But when girls are deprived of the love of dad, they can develop a phenomenon where they hate men and no longer want to be with one. They cut themselves off emotionally and they only want to spend the rest of their life with women. Okay? Same thing with the boys. Our father was nothing. Hate men. Okay? Then they decide, hate men and decide they want to be one. Or still looking for love of dad and decide he needs a man to gratify their father. It can go either way. It can be the hate or the love. Okay, and I can tell you, most of the kid clients I have been molested. Okay? And with everyone who became homosexual, they were molested. Okay? My uncle, my father, my grandfather, my mom's boyfriend. And kids don't tell. Y'all keep thinking they're going to tell you. They're not. Because number one, they're ashamed. Two, they don't want to mess up your relationship, believe it or not. They tell you. Mr. Johnson, I want to tell my mom so bad, but she loves him. She worships the ground he walks on. They put you above them, but you don't put them above yourself. This is what they tell me. Boys too. I can't tell my mom that, Mr. Johnson, that her boyfriend has molested me, and I'm a boy. Okay? And I'm telling you, you get all types of stuff with the boys because that suicide thing kick in. Because most men who complete suicides were raped. Okay? It messes with them. That whole power dynamic, that macho thing, it kills them. Okay? That's why you gotta tell your son to stay out of prison if they haven't wear the pink bow. Okay? I'm real. I used to be Brother Jack, we used to be at the Youth Study Center. Once in a while, you get a little story. All right? I was a psychologist over there. Suicide and child molestation. Child rape and molestation victims are 2 to 11 times more likely to attempt suicide. And it ain't no coming back from death. Okay? Nearly 1 million children are raped or molested every year in this country. Okay? and they know who the perpetrators are, and they don't tell. And sometimes it's so painful for the family that they don't even want to turn in the perpetrator or get them no help. If you ain't going to turn them in, okay, get them some help. But if you don't do nothing, you know what you're doing? You allow him to go and rape other people's kids too. Think about the other kids they didn't get to yet, okay? They don't stop at one, they go through the whole family, okay? So every cousin in the family sitting on their lap at the reunion. Don't make no sense. Say about babies. Kids who was raped or molested, or domestic violence period, abuse, just being whipped or stomped or told they were nothing, are more delinquent, more academic problems, more teenage pregnancy. They don't do well in school because they can't focus. How are you going to focus when you go home, you got your dad going up your skirt? Look out for strangers. Guess again. Strangers only account for 3% of children molested under 6, and less than 5% for children aged 6 to 11. Look at that. Not 10, not 20, not 25. Look at that. 5% and less are strangers. You know these people. And the thing about it, I'm going to tell you the hardest thing to do. My daughter 5, this is going to be hard for me. And you know what that is? Is to sit your daughter down and say, has anybody ever touched you? Because you fear the answer. You know why you fear the answer? Not just because your baby been violated, but you want to know who it was when they tell you. Okay? So you got to protect them. Poor parental supervision. Also, poor parental supervision is the #1 correlate of delinquency in kids. They get in trouble because nobody knows where the hell they at. If you can't write down 4 places where your child is right now, you ain't on your job. Even though you're here listening to me, there should be 4 places if you called or drove by, he or she is there. And if you can't give me 4, you ain't on your job. It's just that simple. Okay? I wouldn't say 1 because children travel. You might give them that freedom. But 4? Come on now. And it better not be, I'm having leaks or ribs or hot me and Shanita gonna roll a blunt. And that's so now I don't understand it because the lips is purple, the fingertips is black. Who wants you? I mean, who wants that? That's cute. It's not cute at all. Walking through school, the thong showing, and his dingy on top of that. And I'm standing there as a psychologist like, what's the treatment plan for this? Single parents, we got to be on our job. Single parents are at an increased risk of having children abused as they tend to have children babysat more often than others. When you're married, you go out, the husband got them. Husband go out, you got them, or the family's going out. Okay? But when you're single, you got to be on your job. And understandably, you're a little bit more stressed because you're flipping that whole load. But when you drop that baby off, you got to make sure you know who got them. And I'm going to tell you something else. People don't take care of your kids as well as you do. Okay? Be on your game. Substance abusing parents are less likely to find a responsible citizen. Okay? I need one. Low-income daycare centers provide poor quality of supervision for children. Not daycare centers in low-income homes. Okay? I'm talking about not daycare centers in low-income environments. I'm talking about, you know the daycare centers I'm talking about. Okay, Pampers on, flies, okay, milk spilt, okay, where the toys at. They just roll the ball all day. Where the academics, it ain't done. Okay? Warning signs. These are your warning signs, okay? Bad dreams. Mommy, daddy, I'm having bad dreams. And the dreams won't necessarily have sexual content now. But if they having recurrent bad dreams, I don't like that. Daydreaming and nightmares. Okay? Anxiety, worrying, nervous behaviors, shaking, nail biting, okay? Shaking teeth, stuttering when they talk, verbal shaking, these tremors, fear of being alone even for short times. Okay? You go into the kitchen to go get a soda. Mommy, don't leave me. Daddy, don't leave me. It's daylight, the light's on. Or they too afraid to go to sleep by themselves, and they've never been that way before. Okay, they don't want the lights off. Quick to jump when you touch it. Quick to jump when you touch it. You go to give your son or your daughter a hug, you're like, whoa, you felt that spirit. Somebody violated my baby. Bedwetting is a big one. Anxiety, bedwetting is an expression of anxiety in many children. Okay? It can be underdeveloped or slow developing bladder, but a lot of times it's anxiety. Okay? And I'm telling you right now, if they're doing number 2s in the bed, you can best believe something ain't right. Okay? unable to sleep too. These are your signs. My child, these are the myths that we work with. My child will tell me if somebody touched them. No, they won't. The men and women in my family would never do such a thing. My mom got 5 boys, right? We all have children, right? And I don't believe my brothers would ever do that. I'm sure they believe the same thing about me, and I wouldn't. But as a precaution, you just do it anyway. It's supposed to be modus operandi. You ain't got to make excuses for why you're doing it, okay? My daughter don't sit on nobody's lap. It's just the way I am, okay? My boyfriend, girlfriend loves my child like his or her own. How do you know? How do you know? You can't necessarily know that. I checked them out and I didn't see anything. That don't mean nothing. Okay? Because as I told you, fellatio, incest, molestation, and rape is on the rise. Emotional vulnerability and risk to children. Parents who are needy are more likely to choose partners who pose an increased risk to abusing their child. Okay, that emotional neediness, as far as I'm concerned, is like the #1 risk factor. You don't know how to choose your men or your women, and you're so needy, you need somebody around, you're going to get the wrong one. And it's even worse for black women because we know only 1 out of 4 black women will get married in their lifetime. So we tend to hold whatever we get sometimes. You know what I mean? But it's better to have nothing than something that's going to make you unhappy. Because what we still fail to realize, happiness ain't got nothing to do with who you with. Happiness is internally generated and has nothing to do with men or money. And the sooner we realize that, the better off we be. Same thing for the fellas. Many pedophiliacs are in denial about their problem and are too ashamed to seek treatment. Who's going to, I got a problem touching kids. Who's going to say that? People don't even like to say they got a substance abuse problem. More or less they're touching babies in the black community. Prevention. Screen your babysitters and daycares to include who they will have around your children. Tell adults ahead of time what is or is not acceptable with your child so they don't think you single them out. Uncle Freddie had them on their lap. Uncle Raheem had them on their lap. When Uncle Billy came, hell no! Not Billy! So what you got to do is normalize it so nobody feels singled out. Because you're less likely to do something about it. He over there steady bouncing off his leg, and he's like, that's too much bouncing. This ain't limited pop, Billy. Put my damn baby out, Billy. Beware of close touching and babying of the young ones and teaches them that it's okay. This is another reason why you can't do it. If all the uncles is doing it, or somebody on the street do it, or somebody you don't want doing it, it's going to seem like it's okay. All right? So that's why you got to do it. You got to make sure your child is clear, because children can't discriminate. Okay, these 4 can bounce me on their lap, but Billy can't. Okay? Nobody can. Establish a close relationship with your child. This is the big problem right here. Our families are so distant, we don't even eat together. So if you ain't got a good relationship with your son and your daughter already, what makes you think they're going to come and tell you about that? They're not going to. Your child is not dating your partner, you are. Parents are the child's worst enemies. I think that's going to be the title of my first book. Because every problem the child got come right from home. Watch who you bring around your children. There's no such thing as being too careful. I compare Mr. Johnson, was that too careful? You know, I told my boyfriend, you know, I like to take my daughter out when I leave. I said, okay, well then you keep on doing it. Okay? That's his problem. He don't like you to leave. She yours forever. He might not necessarily be yours. Okay? Never let your child get punished by potential abusers. They can grow afraid and become less likely to tell you. You know what this is? You're dating him, but you allow him or her to punish your kids. They can send them to the room. They can spank them on the butt. They can, because that's an element of fear, and you gave them authority over your kids. And now you wonder why they don't tell, because mama, daddy, you told me they can tell me what to do, including touching in places I shouldn't be. Okay? Tell me what I know. This is my experience here. Very important. That punishment thing, I don't like that. I don't know. When you marry, you got to do that. You see what I'm saying? Because you got a little daughter, little boy, coming to my house, I'm going to have to whip some butt. You know what I'm saying? Okay, we going to breathe easy. Why didn't she tell what he tell me? Children think the world revolves around them, and they feel responsible and guilty for being violated. They are less likely to tell, especially when threatened, no matter how close you think they want. Okay? They're not going to tell you. The amount of boys being violated by men and women is growing to include fellatio acts that are harder to prove and easier to commit and get away with. And now we got young children molesting even younger children. I'm talking about the 6 and 5-year-old boys. You come upstairs and he on top of the 2-year-old girl. And the thing about it, they don't even know that what they're doing is wrong because you let them watch all types of stuff. Okay? Your daughter coming out the bathroom with heels on and a blonde wig at 3. And you calling me up, don't call me. That ain't in my book. Molesting versus rape. Please understand this difference. Okay? Molesters tend to be your relatives, rapists tend not to be. Okay? Your rapists are like your ex, your boyfriend. Remember, they're not relatives. You know them, they're close. And remember, strangers ain't doing this stuff. People you know. But these molesters tend to be relatives, rapists tend to be the dating people. For example, molesters are smooth. They control their victims through silent coercion and threats. Their offenses take place over time, years, months, weeks, and tend to be with people who have the confidence of the custodial parent. That's the tough part. The people doing the molesting is the last one you would think. The last one you would think. And that's why they do it. They have confidence that they can do this over and over with your seed. Under your nose. Okay? Now don't get me wrong, Billy got a bouncing problem. But trust me, Billy know you know him. So he know he better not be in that room at a certain time. But Raheem got a nice job. The women like him. Last thing you thought, he'd be in there with your nephew. Okay? Rapists are rough. More physically, these are stalkers, controllers, cursing you out. Okay, one eye. More physically coercive with duration to crime. Not as long over the lifespan. Where's my daddy? This is very important, ladies. This is why you got to keep the fathers in their life. Girls and boys without their biological father in their lives are more likely to get violated. When custodial mothers are emotionally needy with poor dating skills, it gets even worse. Okay? Their father needs to be around. And this statistic pops up everywhere, okay? Whether you like it or not, you need to be in their life. If nothing else, so they can tell him when your boyfriend went too far. Verbal abuse. You are dating for two. When dating, you must choose for yourself and your child. Many people verbally abuse their partner's children. Y'all know about this. Why you let them talk to your kids like that? They don't know him. And sometimes with silent approval for the biological parent because you're in love. You can't see. I love him. He needs some discipline. He don't spend no time with them kids. What is he doing telling them what to do? Professional dating. What's wrong with asking for copies of child abuse, criminal clearance, especially when you have kids? Rape occurs so much in our society because men stripped of power in larger society must get their needs met by way of the only means available. Innocent and harmless women and kids. Teach your children not to be alone with anyone during the first 6 months of dating. This is for your teens and preteens, and not until you have met them and got their personal information. Most of us know police who can even run their names. This is simple stuff, we don't even do it. You mean to tell me your daughter's spending time with that boy, and you don't even know where he lives at? You ain't got a phone number? And you know, over the last couple of years, we had a couple incidents where these high school boys killed their girl. I was in a school where it happened, killed the girl. Okay? You got to know these people. You think backward, and sometimes she don't even know. She don't even know his last name. What's his name, sweetie? Boo. What's his name? Boo. What? Boo from 20th Street, huh? When my baby daddy is my daddy. When my baby's daddy is my daddy. Brother, cousin, or granddaddy. The incidence of girls being impregnated by very close members of their family is increasing. I'm seeing this uncles, grandfathers, and ain't nobody saying that. Therapy. If you or someone you love has been the victim of domestic violence, rape, molestation, verbal abuse, physical abuse, because it's all domestic, you need to get help no matter how long ago it happened. You got women against abuse. I'm going to give you a list of places that you can call. And if you think somebody being abused, they will help. If you know of men being abused, they will help. Just take the cops. These are people, you got women against abuse. You got a lot here in Philadelphia. Okay, because there's a lot of that here. Okay, and they will help. So you need to take the numbers down when they come up. Okay, because we all know somebody, if not ourselves, who need to tap into a resource. Okay? I want to empower you. I just don't want you to come and listen. You take one of the numbers and you make a phone call tonight. They either got national domestic violence numbers, national rape hotlines. Okay? I don't understand. How can a black community have organizations for homicide? You got a whole bunch of them. Nothing wrong with it. We need them. religion, church in every other corner, educational systems, all types of political prisoner groups, police brutality groups, economic programs. Why we ain't got nothing for women and kids? Where the domestic violence stuff at? Because it's too sensitive a topic. And just as important as everything else. See, when she get killed by her husband, the church is like, we white rock. We so and so. We mega church. That hurt our numbers. Okay? There you go. Who to call? First, write these down. National Domestic Violence Hotline. Or you can email me, I'll give it to you too. Okay? That's national. You got domestic abuse help for men. Okay? My brother is getting beat up by his girl. Can y'all go get him? Okay? Women in transition. A lot of times with women, you know what makes it so difficult for women to leave? Because of the economic component. Where am I going to go? I can't go to my mom. She treats me like crap. My brothers and sisters ain't really there. Well, I don't have any. So for women, it's that economic piece. He'll take my kids. You know what I mean? It's a lot you got to think about. But I'm telling you, if you don't walk away, you won't be able to come back and get them kids. Okay? You got to strengthen yourself. Women against abuse. Menergy. Menergy even has help for men who are abusers. Okay? Your teenage daughter getting beat on. Okay? Tell her to get booed from 20th Street. Call Menergy. Okay? For you give him some energy. All right? Philadelphia Domestic Abuse Hotline. Women organized against rape. Women against abuse. Legal Center. This is where that comes in. He told me he's going to take the kids. He's going to keep the house. This, that. That's why you need that. And they help most of their women for free too. Okay? Older Adult Protection Service. Like I said, 70 and 80, they're still getting beat on and raped. Even by older partners. Viagra. Now, honestly, because of my own anxiety, I had to make this presentation a little bit more lifeful because it's so serious. And I didn't want everybody to walk out here sad and crying because this is just a, it's a real situation, But we got to take it seriously, y'all. We're losing our community. This is what we're going to do next month. Next time we're here, put that date down. I got flyers over there. November 8th, 6 to 8. My baby's having a baby. We're going to talk about teenage pregnancy and sexual behavior of our youth. Bring all the teenagers you know. Every last one. Okay? Starting at 12. Because the average child in America now loses their virginity at 11 and a half. Yes. So bring them too. Because we feed them that milk with all them hormones. They're growing fast. And we're talking about, no, that's just her Africanity. And that was milk. That lunchroom milk in the back. Okay? So Thursday, November 8th, we're going to deal with that. And then December, part 3, black male-female relationships. Okay? And then, let me go back. Boom. So that's Thursday. And then the next day, so this is back-to-back, 2 events. You got to come out and support National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America in Cobra. I'm going to be doing a dinner lecture program for them at the International House, University of Pennsylvania campus. I've never been there, but I'm looking forward to it. And I'm going to be talking about post-traumatic slavery disorders. Okay? It's going to be deep. Okay, I got a whole host of sub-disorders under that. Dr. Umar and myself presented at the Cobra National Conference with one other assistant, okay, on post-traumatic slavery disorder. So this is going to be an extension of that. Okay, so you want to come out Friday, November 9th. The tickets are $20. And the phone number is 215-878-5726. But I got a flyer of this over there. My Uncle Fred smiling down on me. Any questions? Any questions at all? All right, how did y'all like it? Was it informative?